Welcome to the buymeacoffee.com/JamesPoeartistry, the coffee tips page that supports my James Poeartistry creative productions and work. See also JamesPoeartistry.online. Good day, perceptive readers. This is James Lynch. You can look at this as a James Poeartistry Consultant moment. It actually goes along the same vein of relating information, though, along the blue gold iron. But in this case, because I'm going to go longer than 5 minutes, maybe even longer than 10 minutes on this subject, I said, well, I won't place this in the blue gold iron moment, but I still wanted to reference it because there's other information that I have not revisited, like during what happened with the pandemic, those reports that I did before that time and during that time. That before that time, you see, I've expressed certain concerns. Some people heeded the warnings, if you will, and some persons didn't. And so they continued along. And now looking at hindsight, a lot of those reports that came from myself and others were true. Now, with that being said, I want to talk about Facebook, and that's what's in the main title of this podcast here. And it's along the line of the Facebook letter, the official letter. So you can find this on the website. So if it's not official, from these different avenues, and this will still alert Mark Zuckerberg that someone has information out there that, he didn't write or he did write. So it would notify him because it's on such an important letter. But in this case, with the many sources that's been using it, it's, I guess you could say, it's trusted and verified. And this is the letter I'm going to read to you. Before I read to you, this Facebook letter, which is now Meta, you see, metadata, etc. But that's what Facebook is called in its different connections. Somehow you see the branding, even in Instagram, of Meta. Now, years ago, given Facebook its prop, Facebook, along with the technology has made life better. Guess what? Communication through Facebook has made life even better as well. It has been a very fast, robust platform to keep people able to communicate with one another that at one time could have taken weeks or months, yes, maybe even years, to even have certain connections with certain family members because of where they live, you see. And especially back in the days where all you had was the telephone. And during that time, long distance, boy, I tell you what, you had to work overtime in order to get the money, the funds to pay to talk to even a grandparent for 5 or 10 minutes. You see what I'm saying? Over the regular telephone line. Where Facebook, the technology that Mark Zuckerberg founded, created, etc. Now, you're always going to have some people that said that, he took some ideas from this person or that platform, which I know does happen. I'm not here to say whether he did or not. He did have help, you see, partners, and that's why, he's one of the co-founders. But the whole point is, he gets the credit because the idea of Facebook was his. He put in a lot of work, a lot of coding, a lot of establishing the relationships to get funding, you see. So Facebook, which is also now Meta, is his, and he earned it. Now, some time ago, a lot of people were trying to actually get jobs with Facebook back during the technology boom, etc. And, if you got a job at Facebook, you were paid very well. Now, what has happened during a period, getting over the 2010 period, some persons were actually through different third-party companies that were saying that they were passing out the applications. You see what I'm saying? In order to get your foot in the door, to be tested, etc., etc. Some of those tests were extensive as well. I mean, they really went into your brain and your noggin, into areas that actually dealt more with social issues, not just you being able to add, subtract, code, or input data, which you may have just been applying for. But it was an extensive surveys in that way. Now, what happened is some persons, they said, boy, they never really received a thank you email, a follow up, whether they got the job or not. Well, in observation in some of those cases, and this has what been a charge that has been made back then, but now people are finding out more and more so today with the job market, that some of the charges were that no, some of those surveys were once again just to get some of those job applications were really just to get more. Surveys done, or applications or a quota with really no intent to pass the information on. You see, later on to really the people who really needed it. I'm not saying it didn't happen in every case, but see, there were later reports that came out still during that era that started showing exactly how even Facebook was getting their data, the different experiments and things of that nature. This is just a FYI for you. But see, today now, you see some of the arguments that have been going on with different sites, professional sites, that say that, yeah, they will place an application on this site or that site and would just keep it up there even though the job been fulfilled months ago or what have you. It is just to keep a steady stream or what have you. All the same, to actually just put up application under the pretext just to get, like I told you, some more survey information to fill a personal quota here or there, or what have you, sometimes can, that's a thoughtful concern, a personal concern, so I won't go into it. But that's what they're saying happening in the job market today. So there's some applications again out there on some of these sites, and a bit more the job ain't open at all. Even though some people may say, well, they planning for the future. All the same, you know what I'm talking about. Along in the spirit of what, I'm mentioning about Facebook here, how certain information was just straight up gathered from people at times, and it was just done in a way where if they would have went through another way, some of these third parties, they would have just had to pay people to do the things that they did, etc. To provide the type of information that was supposed to be, even in some cases confidential, and you heard the whole story on that. So here we have a situation where what people would call a big fiasco that happened in one of the elections in the United States of America. And during that time, you started getting more censorship going on that was just straight up pretty, again, messed up. And yet, this is what was going on. And you hear some people saying that persons weren't shadow banned. You hear, during that time, people who were saying, oh, that person don't know what they're talking about. They're not being censored. They're not being shadow banned. But see, those were the talking points to make people think that these individuals wasn't experiencing what they were experiencing. And what happened during that time period, too, is some of the persons who were censored, then they started having a loss of confidence even in the social media systems. And then some persons would say, well, why don't you build your own? Why don't you create your own? And I even related way back then, it takes money. And then when you're already censored and blackballed by everybody who would actually have the funds and all of them in the know and they're keeping it secret among their good old boy system, you don't get the funds you need. I even proven recently that you got people, once you've been outside or stuff, you got people who won't even give you a dime. Won't even give you a dime, even for a valuable service that you provided. I stand by that. And I know I stand before God in doing this. Why? Because the reality is, over the past 10 or 20, 20 years or what have you, a lot of my writings and my research has been used. A lot of my creations have been used. And I mentioned before, the censorship comes about at times by some people who had them something stashed away where they could get a lot of ideals and a lot of other stuff from, but wanted to just keep it secret to themselves. Now, I've always said that, hey, whatever the job is, you got some persons that I say the simple folk, it's like, hey, you pay me my fee or what have you, or even my minimum wage fee or what have you, and you can do what you want with the data. Certain data you just have to give attribution for. And I tell you again, a person, a company that doesn't want to do that, they're on the verge of just being, they got some dishonorable people working for them. And those same dishonorable people can end up giving their own business or company name that view that I told you, where persons start getting a vote of no confidence in them in this way or that way. How do you get that confidence back? How do you start with getting that confidence back? Well, one, I did a report on the pandemic again about the Tuskegee experiments. This was before the pandemic happened. But in my first report, I was actually giving you the ideal, the spirit of the time when those experiments first started, and what was the goal of even the founders and the people involved in experimentation and things of that nature. And see, and this is what I mean by when I say, it's a shame sometimes when you have to use a qualifier on research and accurate statements that people really do know is true, but it's because it's coming from you, they don't want to listen. Well, during that same year, I think within a few months later, there was another woman that came out and went into detail of the Tuskegee medical experiments as well. I highlighted her. And she was so thorough and added additional information to it that I know it shook some people up. Why? Because of who it was coming from then. And she made one clear statement from a quote from a person who actually said, and I'm just telling you, there is no wonder that the black community feels the way that they do about the medical community at times. And then she went a step further to even get a quote from a president of the United States of America who actually apologized for that time period, for all those cover-ups, for the deaths, for the pain. Yeah, it's many decades later, but that's what the person did because of the level that it was on. Now, of August 26, 2024, You can tell after much consideration, Mark Zuckerberg wrote a letter to the Honorable Jim Jordan, Chairman, Committee on the Judiciary, United States House of Representatives, wrote this letter, and I'm going to read it straight through. Chairman Jordan, I appreciate the committee's interest in content moderation on online platforms. As you are aware, Meta has produced thousands of documents as part of your investigation and made a dozen employees available for transcribed interviews, further to our cooperation with your investigation. I welcome the opportunity to share what I've taken away from this process. There's a lot of talk right now around how the United States government interacts with companies like Meta, and I want to be clear about our position. Our platforms are for everyone. We're about promoting speech and helping people connect in a safe and secure way. As part of this, we regularly hear from governments around the world and others with various concerns around public discourse and public safety. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions, including COVID-19 related changes we made to our enforcement in the wake of this pressure. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. I also think we made some choices that Here, let me repeat that sentence again. I also think we made some choices that, with the benefit of hindsight and new information, we wouldn't make today. Like I said to our teams at the time, I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction. And we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. In a separation situation, the FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on corruption allegations involving then Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it while waiting for a reply. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. We've changed our policies and process to make sure this doesn't happen again. For instance, we no longer temporarily demote things in the United States while waiting for fact checkers. Apart from content moderation, I want to address the contributions I made during the last presidential cycle to support electoral infrastructure. The idea here was to make sure local election jurisdictions across the country had the resources they needed to help people vote safely during a global pandemic. I made these contributions through the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. They were designed to be nonpartisan, spread across urban, rural, and suburban communities. Still, despite the analysis, I've been showing otherwise. I know that some people believe this work benefited one party over the other. My goal is to be neutral and not play a role one way or the other, or to even appear to be playing a role. So I don't plan on making similar contribution this cycle. Respectfully, Mark Zuckerberg, founder, chairman, and CEO, Meta Platforms. Perceptive readers, I hope these thoughts help. If you have any questions, please, your support is welcome and thank you through the buymeacoffee.com/JamesPoeartistry.